Let's talk about the prostitute imposter syndrome persona. And again, the big question here is, do you do more than your partner or others to make the relationship work? Because that is sort of the key indicator that you've moved into your relationships with your imposter syndrome persona. So the struggle here, we always talk about the struggle of each one of the personas, right? And the struggle when we are living out of this particular archetype is that it's sort of, we're willing to sell ourselves. And that's kind of the core issue, is how much are we willing to sell ourselves, our morals, our integrity, our intellect, our word, our body, our soul, our dreams, our ambitions. How much are we willing to sell or trade off for the sake of physical security? And that is that struggle. And the prostitute archetype also really embodies and tests the power of faith, right? Because if you have faith, no one can buy you. But if you don't have faith, if you don't have faith in yourself, if you don't have that sense of your own value and faith in that value, then you are going to give it away. Then you are going to allow it and to make trade-offs for it in exchange for that physical security. So again, with the prostitute imposter syndrome persona, it's about permissiveness. It's allowing others to take over. And, I reflect back, because this was the one that I relied upon probably all the way through my teens, my 20s, well into my 30s, before I finally started, and Anna and I finally figured out the key for actually being able to work through our development to really build up that inner foundation. And I can list story after story, situation after situation where it was really, really clear. And that, again, that permissiveness, it means other people have more power. They have more, we just tolerate anything and everything that people throw at us, and keep working harder and harder to hold on to that sense of security. And I think there's also that aspect with the prostitute where it's like we give up trying to be independent because there's some level of discomfort around that independence, that we don't feel, we don't, again, have enough faith in our ability to provide for our own physical security, and that allows being independent to be safe. So we sacrifice our dreams for inclusion, for being liked, for fitting in. And again, we ignore our own values and what's important to us in order to seek approval. And some of the examples that I always talk about, for those of you who have done my weekly workshop, and if you haven't, I really encourage you to kind of join me on one of those upcoming workshops. But I talk about the example that I have that was so front and center in my marriage about 15 years ago, where I was working so hard to hang on to that marriage. And I knew it was in grave difficulty. And I was doing everything that I thought I should be doing, right? So I was generous, I was supportive, I was encouraging, I would invest time and energy and money into making sure that my husband felt okay. I would, give in to things that he wanted. If he said no, or if he said this was really important, I would go along to get along. And over time, because of that, because I was always sort of giving and selling, essentially myself, it's like I didn't understand how to look at his behavior and say, I'm worth more, right? I don't need to give that up. I don't need to tolerate that I can actually be in this relationship from that place of partner. But when you're working out of the prostitute imposter syndrome, remember that we're really sort of giving that gift, right? And that giving it away and continuously giving it away because we're trying to hold on to some sense of security, right? And so with the prostitute imposter syndrome, as I was living out of it, it was like I was doing everything, right? I was running a successful business. I was working crazy hours. I was traveling. I had 2 young kids at home, and my husband didn't work. And most of you might say, oh, but he was a stay-at-home dad. No, my husband did not work. And so when he decided that while he was not working with these young kids, that he didn't want to watch them anymore, I hired a full-time nanny. When he didn't want to take care of the pool, I hired a pool service company. When he didn't want to cut the grass, I hired someone to do that. You get the idea here, right? And then as we were going further into it, and I remember having people coming over, and they would be saying, so what are you going to do now? The kids are both heading off in towards school. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll do nothing. Maybe I'll do something. And I remember so clearly my old boss saying, like, how long are you going to put up with this? And I thought, I never asked myself that question because I just kept trying. I just kept trying to figure out if I did this, if I was good enough at this, if I, if I was really generous, if I showed him how to do this, then he would respond in kind, and I would all get that back, right? And that never happened. And so, and in the living in relationships out of the imposter syndrome means we always feel neglected and dissatisfied. We end up in that place of saying, I don't get what I need. I don't get what it is that makes me feel, valued and appreciated. I don't have that sense of satisfaction, that sense that we're in this partnership, because what we do automatically is we adapt. We adapt, we tolerate, we adapt, we shift our own behavior, we sidestep it, we, sort of change our view or our vision of things in order to make up for others not pulling their weight, and never actually dealing with what is actually going on, never actually saying and negotiating for, this is what I need, this is what I expect, this is the way it needs to work, because we give to get love. We give and we give and we give to get love. And when we don't get that love, then it reinforces the fact that, again, we're in the imposter syndrome. There must be something about us that's not enough. And so we give some more and give some more. And what happens when we stop giving and we stop having our relationship out of the prostitute persona is there's nothing there. And that's certainly what happened with my husband and I, is when I started to say, here's my line in the sand, and no, you don't get to do everything you want. And yes, I have expectations, and we have to negotiate these things, and you don't get to decide, and I'm not just going to go along, or vice versa. There was nothing, we lost sort of what was holding it, because as soon as I moved out of my persona, it didn't allow us to stay in the dynamic that we had created. So it was challenging. It was not easy. There's no question, but it's recognizing that I don't have to give it away, that I have worth and I have value. And when I build my relationship on the expectation that I am independent, and I can be independent and yet still be in a relationship, and I don't have to give it all away, is when we start to make traction around that.